Welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today because, well, we are embarking on a truly fascinating journey. We're going to uncover an ancient biblical mystery that has literally been hiding in plain sight for nearly 2 millennia. You know, history can sometimes feel like just a collection of dusty dates and old crumbling buildings. But every once in a while, you stumble across a story that is just so clever and so deeply rooted in the everyday lives of ancient people that it completely blows your mind. And that is exactly what we have for you today. We are going to explore the famous 7 churches of the Book of Revelation. More specifically, we're going to see if we can crack the code together on a very strange, very harsh message delivered to one particular city, Laodicea. So let's dive right into this.
Okay, let me start off by asking you a quick question. Do you know where the 7 churches of Revelation actually are? When most people read that final book of the New Testament, they naturally imagine these locations scattered somewhere across ancient Israel, or maybe over in Greece or Rome. But here's the big geographical surprise right out of the gate. All 7 of these famous biblical locations are entirely situated in the Aegean region of modern-day Turkey. That's right, every single one of these ancient communities that the Apostle John wrote to was located in Western Asia Minor. It's wild, right? And it really just brilliantly illustrates how geography can instantly shift our entire perspective on ancient texts.
Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, Egenen Yedi Kadim Cemaati. Number 2, Laodicea, Kendi Kendine Yeten Şehir. Number 3, Ilık Tarihi Mesajı. And number 4, Günümüzde Büyüleyici Arkeolojik Kazılar.
Let's start with section 1. Ege'nin 7 kadim cemaati, which translates to the Aegean's 7 ancient communities.
Now, before we can truly understand the mystery of Laodicea, we've got to understand the broader historical and geographical neighborhood it belonged to. And we should probably start with the word church itself. Today, when we say church, our brains almost immediately picture a physical building, right? Maybe a place with stone walls, stained glass windows, or a tall steeple. But to the Apostle John, who was exiled on the island of Patmos at the time, the word klise, or church, meant something entirely different. In this early Christian era, it strictly referred to a community or a congregation of believers living in a specific city. So John wasn't writing to 7 buildings, he was writing to 7 dynamic, living groups of people who were actively navigating the incredibly complex world of the Roman Empire in Western Anatolia.
And actually, while we're clearing up facts, let's quickly delineate between 2 famous historical concepts that often get jumbled up. On one side, we have the 7 churches. These are the 7 Christian congregations mentioned in Revelation, located right there in the Aegean. But on the other side, you might have heard of the legendary 7 sleepers, or Yedi Uyuyamlar. Now, the 7 sleepers is a totally different legend about 7 youths who hid in a cave to escape persecution and miraculously slept for centuries. They are super fascinating for sure, but they have absolutely nothing to do with the 7 churches. Our focus today is strictly on these very real, bustling ancient municipalities.
Taking a quick look at the roster of the first 6 cities John wrote to, you can really see how this builds our understanding of the region. Like we said, these locations are all in modern-day Turkey. You have Ephesus, near modern Selçuk, which was known as the church that forgot its first love. Then Smyrna, Pergamon, and Thyatira follow, each praised for faithfulness or, heavily criticized for corruption. Then there's Sardis, near Salili, which was brutally called spiritually dead. And that is deeply ironic when you realize Sardis was the ancient capital of Lydia, literally the birthplace where money was invented. And finally Philadelphia and Alasher, which was faithful and highly praised. It's essentially a fascinating spiritual report card for the ancient world.
But notice, that was only 6. There is a 7th community. The final letter in the book of Revelation was sent to Laodicea, located near modern-day Denizli. And this is where our story really zeroes in, because out of all 7 cities, Laodicea received the most brutal, harsh, and uncompromising feedback of them all. There was no praise, just pure criticism.
Moving on to section 2, Laodicea, Kendi Kendine Yeten Şehir, Laodicea, the self-sufficient city.
So, what exactly made Laodicea the target of such fierce criticism? Well, to answer that, we have to understand exactly what kind of people lived here and what their daily lives actually look like. To put it bluntly, Laodicea was ridiculously successful. During the Hellenistic and Roman periods, this place was an absolute powerhouse. It was situated right on major trade routes, making it one of the Aegean's wealthiest banking and finance centers. But it wasn't just old money, they had massive, booming industries too. They were world famous for producing this highly sought-after, premium black wool. On top of that, they housed a renowned medical school that manufactured a highly lucrative eye ointment.
So picture this. The citizens of Laodicea are incredibly wealthy bankers, strutting around in designer black wool clothing with the best medical care in the ancient world. They were at the absolute top of the food chain.
But then, boom. The year is 60 AD, and disaster strikes. A massive, absolutely devastating earthquake violently shook the region, entirely leveling the grand city of Laodicea.
Now, usually in the ancient Roman Empire, when a major city was destroyed by an earthquake, the emperor in Rome would step in. They'd waive the city's taxes, offer massive financial disaster relief to help rebuild. It was just good politics. But the leaders of Laodicea, they looked at the ruins of their city, they looked at the emperor's money, and essentially said, yeah, no thanks, we're good. The historical record actually shows they declared, bis kendimize yeteres, meaning we are sufficient unto ourselves. They were so unbelievably wealthy and frankly so fiercely arrogant that they flat out rejected Roman disaster relief. They rebuilt their entire sprawling metropolis using only their own pockets. I mean, that is just next-level swagger and self-reliance right there.
Which brings us to Section 3, Aluxion Taidahi Massaja, the historical message of lukewarm water.
So we know Laodicea was rich, arrogant, and extremely self-reliant. But how does all of that connect back to the biblical text? Well, it all comes down to municipal plumbing. Seriously, the absolutely crucial point here is understanding a weird geographical quirk of this specific valley. Just a short distance away from Laodicea was the city of Hierapolis, which we know today as Pamukkale. Hierapolis was famous for its hot, steaming, mineral-rich thermal waters that were used for healing and therapy. Then on the other side of the valley, you had the city of Colossae. Colossae sat right at the foot of a mountain and was blessed with ice-cold, refreshing, life-giving drinking water. But Laodicea, despite all their money and power, they didn't have a good local water source. They actually had to pipe their water in from miles away via aqueducts, and by the time this piped water actually reached the citizens of Laodicea, it was heavily calcified, it smelled terrible due to the minerals, and worst of all, it was stubbornly, tepidly lukewarm. It wasn't hot enough to soothe your muscles, and it certainly wasn't cold enough to quench your thirst. If you drank it straight out of the pipe, it would literally make you sick to your stomach.
And this context perfectly frames the most famous insult in the book of Revelation. The Apostle John, delivering this spiritual message to the church in Laodicea, writes, I know your deeds. You are neither cold nor hot. So, because you are lukewarm, I will spit you out of my mouth. You say, I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. When you put these puzzle pieces together, the sheer brilliance of this message suddenly clicks.
It is literally a brilliant spiritual insult that is perfectly disguised as a complaint about the local plumbing. John is using the everyday frustrating reality of their terrible municipal water supply as a direct metaphor for their spiritual apathy. He's essentially telling them, you guys are exactly like your water. Hierapolis provides hot water for healing. Colossae provides cold water for refreshing. But you, Laodicea, with all your massive banks, your fancy black wool, and your eye medicine, you are utterly useless. Your arrogance has made you lukewarm, and just like that gross water sitting in your aqueducts, you make people want to spit you out. Understanding this environmental and economic context completely revolutionizes how we read this 2,000-year-old text. It wasn't just some abstract piece of poetry, it was a highly specific, hyper-localized, and devastating critique.
Let's hit our final section. Section 4. Günümüzde büyüleyici arkeolojik kazılar. Today's fascinating archaeological excavations.
Because you see, the story of Laodicea isn't just trapped in ancient manuscripts. You can actually go and walk its streets today. The historical timeline of this site is sweeping and monumental. It was founded way back in the 3rd century BC by the Seleucid king Antiochus II, who affectionately named the city after his wife, Laodicea. We already talked about that defining earthquake in 60 AD where they just decided to rebuild everything themselves. But the story didn't end with John's harsh letter either. By the 4th century AD, after Christianity had been legalized across the Roman Empire, the community here actually flourished once again, and they constructed an absolutely massive monumental pilgrimage basilica. And today, Laodicea stands as one of Turkey's largest and most active ongoing excavation areas. If you visit Denizli, right on your way to the famous White Terraces of Pamukkale, you can literally step right into this ancient world. That incredible 4th century monumental basilica we just mentioned, it has been stunningly restored by archaeologists, with all of its original mosaics and columns brought back into the light. Because of its intense historical and biblical significance, it currently serves as one of the most important pilgrimage points for the Christian world today. It is an absolute must-visit location for history buffs, theology enthusiasts, or honestly, anyone who just loves a good story etched in stone.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. We just discovered together that one of the most famous biblical passages ever written was actually a clever, highly localized jab at a city's terrible plumbing and arrogant banking culture. Context absolutely changes everything. It breathes real, tangible life into the past, so it really makes you wonder, what other incredible secrets, inside jokes, and deeply human stories are just waiting to be unearthed in history? Keep questioning, keep digging, and I will catch you on the next explainer.